Well, good day and welcome once again to Moments with Dr. Steve. I am Dr. Steve Bonenberger, and boy, I have been having so much fun doing this live format here on this platform, wherever it is that you find us. And there's all kinds of reasons why it's becoming more and more fun, but one of the big reasons is reconnecting with people that I haven't spoken to in sometimes decades. And it just reminds me of the reach, not just of this platform where you find us, but of the reach of my life and my days. And I'm not grandiose, don't think that way, but just the hard work that I've put in over all the many decades now of serving God and serving broken people. You know, I had this conversation today with this guy and whom I love, and I hope I get to introduce him to you, but I wouldn't do so without his permission. But we were talking just about the church and how the unlikely things that have happened in my own life regarding the church and his unlikely things that have happened in church, and yet both of our determination that the gospel and the church and the alternative way to live life correctly, and I think his opinion, I would never speak for someone else, and that has been a really fun thing to reconnect. So for those of you that I've known throughout the decades, drop me a note. Yes, I'm still here. Yes, I'm still working, thank God. And yes, I've been a writer, a creative, a thinker, a speaker, a presenter, a counselor, a therapist, a healer, a pastor, a business person, all those things. And I've made a lot of mistakes and I've made a lot of successes. And I've, bungled some things, but a lot of things I've done okay. And so the truth of the matter is, I want you to remember always, that hold on just a second. I have to pause and do something for one of my folks here. But I want you to remember always that God remembers your name. God remembers your name. God has not forgotten your name. You are not adrift at sea if you're a believer in Christ. You are not. And we have built what I call the Invoke system of human capacity. The Invoke system of human capacity. And to be able to work people through it is perhaps the great delight of my life, other than my family and my children and my grandchildren. Other than that, at the high level is the work that I have had the privilege to create in my life. And so today we're going to talk about more of the Writer's Covenant. We're going to keep plowing and keep encouraging you to compose and to compile. And we're going to keep pushing into this work. And today we're going to talk about my measuring cup and my measuring cups and my personal way of doing this for over 40 years and clocking. And I have some daily habits. I have some daily pieces that I work hard to, I don't have to work hard to keep them. Perhaps there was a day I did, but now they're just so ingrained in my DNA that they just simply happen. The first one is daily activity. Every day I try to write. I don't try, I write. I have missed few days since I started this wonderful practice each year, all over 40 years ago. And I find that my journal is not just my very best friend and companion, but it is sometimes a biased, but generally an unbiased listener. Sometimes my journal has words that it speaks to me that are a little caustic and a little hard to measure, to accept, but I've learned to do that. And so for you, I encourage you every single day, I don't care if you're a writer or not, to start writing. You can write sentences, you can write words, you can write phrases, but this is to me the great truth meter, the great collector of wisdom, the great insight builder in a person's life. So daily activity, writing each day, and then a collection cistern. The writing permits me to collect my thoughts, to organize my thoughts, and to keep my thoughts, and to process my thoughts. And we're building all kinds of tools, and we're not alone. There are all kinds of tools that you can find for journaling and for collecting ideas and for making lists and for creating life priorities. So this is kind of common practice now, but find this. I remember when I discovered this idea of collecting thoughts and organizing thoughts. And it was long ago when I was a pastor, and back then I had a card file system. For those aged ones out there, you remember those little 3x5 cards, and I had stacks and categories of them. It was kind of funny, but now it's much easier, much simpler to do. The next is think before you speak. Generally, not always, unfortunately for me and others, I think. But generally, I like to write a response or reply and think through my reply to someone before I speak to them. And that act of reflection and then construction, and that idea of organizing those ideas with kindness and clarity and distinction, and working hard to remove any kind of rancor or any kind of miscommunication, that really helps. So my measuring cup is full of daily activity. There is a collection system that I've built. I work hard to think before I speak. Composition. Daily writing ultimately shapes and morphs into matures into compositions. You can't do this work. Let me say to the positive. As you do this work, your compositions will begin to take shape. You'll begin to notice that they take form. You'll notice that they begin to take thematic structure. You'll notice that there are threads that weave throughout them. I heard one guy one time say about the Rolling Stones that basically they had one song. But I thought, yeah, because that's a collection and a composition of these people's work, projects. Thought structures expand. It's a simple part of the larger universal structure. If and allow you permit God to work in your life, eternal patterns, listen to me, begin to be infused into your world. I'm going to say that again. As you begin to compose, as you begin to think before you speak, as you begin to build collecting cisterns and collecting silos, as you use daily activity, you will notice that projects start to emerge naturally. And as you start to notice them, and you'll notice that God begins to weave his thought structures and his eternal patterns and plans into your world, because it's inevitable. If you are involved in spiritual things, spiritual topics are going to be absorbing you. Next are titles and IP, intellectual property. Next are titles and IP, intellectual property. Think about the Rolling Stones and stay on them. How many intellectual properties, how many titles have they created in their careers? I don't know, hundreds. How many have I done? I think I have 17 titles and 5 or 6 courses now, and thousands of sermons and what I call the bamboo forest of sermons, thousands of radio shows, hundreds of television appearances, on and on and on the list goes. Titles and IP. Your main goal, your big, compelling, magnetic, pulling force is to create and build and launch intellectual properties, titles, and you have at least one of these baked into your DNA. Value add begins to arrive and pile up as you move and navigate into these often turbulent and conflicted waters, but always produce progress. Always produce progress. Stay in the work and keep working. The Writer's Covenant. Now, the Writer's Covenant is a definitive work in that it collapses and disintegrates obstacles and stopping barriers. It's a how-to manual. It's a simple construct that leads you either step by step and sequentially or topically, depending on how you decide to use the work, through the writing labyrinth reference guide. It becomes a resource tool that is filled with inspirational, instructional aha moments, when your brain glitches, when your process stalls, when your work is interrupted by life. The covenant draws you back into the universe of creativity and does so rapidly and in tried and true fashion. Character development and POVs. Character development and POVs. I think this may be the great strength of the work. I am a character-driven author. Everything I do is based upon my development of characters, and I think I've nailed this, if I can say that humbly. When you go into the Writer's Covenant and you start to study how to really develop a character and use the tools and resource that I've developed, it provides you a sketch pad that literally becomes a launching tarmac to build compelling characters that become the primary drivers of your stories. Conflict. I also would say that I've nailed this. Conflict and disruption inside the Writer's Covenant, inside this book. I have outlined multiple ways of creating conflict and interpreting conflict in a storyline. And when people have used, the people that have used the Writer's Covenant, they have often written back to me and said, man, the piece on conflict, that really helped me get some clarity. So if your mind is stuck on how to create tension, that whole concept, that whole methodology, if you will, is weaved and baked into the Writer's Covenant, good and evil. I build tales of good versus evil. I don't know what you build. In our discussion, I plow deep and wide and often in this work into how you create definitive evil and how you create contrasting good. I'll tell you, it's worth your time to plow into that. Definitive and defining work. In the end, the goal is simple: to help as many people as possible build literature that becomes the personal calling card for their life and makes them a shining star in God's ultimate constellation. Now, if you wish to speak to me, if you want to talk to me, send me a DM. I reply if you're not a bot and if you're not an idiot. There are lots of people out there that only want to do scam work. We avoid them and we flee them, and if you come into my life, I'll jettison you quickly. But for those of you that are interested in building real work, ping me. We will work on your project and help you not just conceive it and work on it, but complete it and then launch it. That's our work. Until next time, this is Moments with Dr. Steve. I'm Dr. Steve Bonenberger. Travel far, my friend. Travel far.